Well, this is good company. You know me. I love some good company. And so I am really excited about this conversation because I have in my house a Gen Alpha, and I am wondering how best to navigate her spiritual growth. And there's been some very interesting studies done as of late, thanks to Alpha and what they've been doing, understanding that next generation or even that next generation. So Charles Karugu is joining me here today. Charles, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. Holly, thanks for having me.
Of course. When I got the email of all the things that you guys have been asking this next generation, there's actually a survey being done. Like, that is so key. You are the Alpha Youth Associate. Tell me a little bit about what you do for Alpha.
For sure. Yeah. Well, like I said, thanks again for the invitation. Excited to hear a little bit more about you, your daughter, Gen Alpha. As we dive into the stats, she can kind of be like our, is this true or not?
Right.
In terms of what the stats are saying. But yeah, I get the amazing privilege of working for Alpha Canada as the Alpha Youth Associate. And so ultimately what that really means is I get the privilege of hanging around youth pastors, youth leaders. I get the privilege of hanging around students. And really asking this question of like, what does it mean? What does it look like to have safe spaces that are both open, invitational, and safe for conversations around life, faith, and purpose? And so in terms of what that practically looks like, it's an 8-week series. I want to say 8-week series. I always get the numbers. I think it's 8-week series, 10 sessions in those 8 weeks. And individuals are able to access that resource and use it as a tool to help cultivate and facilitate those conversations around life, faith, and purpose. And so, yeah, a little bit of what I get to do here.
I feel like I'm cheating, as you can see, but our listeners can't. I'm leaning into the mic. I feel like I'm going undercover, and this is wonderful. We're getting the inside scoop. So help me understand, why did Alpha feel this survey was so necessary?
Oh, such a good question, Holly. I mean, ultimately at the heart of it is like we care about this rising generation. Mm-hmm. And we started noticing that there were some pretty massive shifts happening culturally. And we wanted to do our best to listen, not just to maybe what culturally might be being said in different media platforms, but listen to them directly. And so this was one of the ways that we were able to do that, is talk to Gen Alpha themselves and ask questions around their faith, ask questions around the things in which they're interested in. And really what we were able to find is some like extraordinary insights. I like to always say that, like, I'm not someone that necessarily like is excited about data. I'm not one that like looks at a graph and goes like, oh man, how exciting is it to like depict like what this graph is saying?
This is neat.
This is really cool, right?
Yeah.
But love those who do get that excitement out of that, and so valuable. But what I would say is, like, looking through this resource, looking through what the survey has brought back to us, what I'm realizing is that data kind of has this potential of giving us almost like a glimpse, if you will, almost like a prophetic glimpse of maybe what God is doing as we navigate those trends that we're seeing. And ultimately, I think this is kind of what we find in the survey, is like these 3 main themes that I think will be encouraging to those who get to listen.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've had conversations here on Good Company before about some of the positive things that are being noted with this new generation, the alphas, if you will. But really, we're the alphas as the boomers and Gen X. But help me understand, just statistically, who are Gen Alpha?
Yeah, great question. Let's start there. Let's kind of
like the boring numbers. Right. Like, who are we talking to?
Totally. Yeah. So Gen Alpha would be those individuals that are born between the years of 2010 to 2024. And so if you think of it, it's like it's the first generation born entirely like in the 21st century. And so it's the kids of the millennials, maybe the kids of like those Gen Xers that had kids at an older age. Mm-hmm. And something really interesting to note about this is just how large this population actually is. And so it hits around 2 billion individuals globally by the end of this year. And so it's the largest generation in human history. And so you can kind of note that as something to specifically pay attention to, that the young, one of our youngest demographics, because I guess we're now stepping into what would be, I guess, Gen Beta, but Gen Alpha, that 22 to 24, makes up the largest group of individuals in our world, both from a historic standpoint, but even right now. And so you'll see a lot of individuals pointing attention towards that, as it will. I mean, we're already seeing it happen, but as it continues to shift culture.
So what kind of questions did our Gen Alphas answer?
Yeah, good question. We asked them like a pretty wide variety of questions, from faith-based questions to things that they're interested in. We specifically tried to navigate like the differences between an individual that would identify as a Christian, but even one that wouldn't, to see the differences between that. And so, yeah, it's a pretty wide range of things of, like, one, are you a Christian, all the way down to the depths of, when you have deep spiritual questions, who do you go to? What kind of religious spiritual practices have you tried? What type of conversations are you having at school? What online platforms are you using, and what are you using them for? We recognize and know that like the digital lives of these individuals is like a massive aspect of their lives. And so, yeah, really diving into those specific areas that we've recognized as like key markers of things in which are forming them.
Okay. So I've heard that they have a hunger for Jesus and they go to church more than boomers.
Yeah. So I would say this, like, throughout asking all these questions, the three main themes that we came out with was, one, this generation arguably is the most like spiritually curious generation that we've seen in a while. But two, what we're also finding out of this curiosity that they have in the spiritual realm, they're having these conversations, these deep conversations at a younger age, and in different ways. So where we would maybe see in past generations, these conversations living in spaces like churches, small group spaces, really like tailored within like that subsect. We're seeing that these students are actually having them all across different platforms, from online platforms to in school. These conversations are coming up. And so they're having these conversations as is at a very young age. And then the last thing that we found in terms of a theme through the data that we were able to collect is that there seems to be like an outpacing of their courage and their calling. This idea that like their bravery when it comes to their faith is outpacing maybe their level of belief, whether it be like in what they believe about God or even like what they believe about themselves. And so I guess the question even in that one alone is, what does that mean for us as people outside of Gen Alpha trying to connect with Gen Alpha? And so I'm sure we'll be able to dive deeper into each one of those ones.
And that's the area, of course, that would interest me as a mom of two who are in this Gen Alpha. But even my older one, who is turning 12 soon, wasn't liking going to Sunday school because they played games. So we found a Sunday school where they play one Bible-based game and then they dive right into the Word. And that's what she wants. At 12, I would have much rather run around and played, but faith was so much more intertwined in our society then, and it wasn't hard to find. Now it's hard to find, and there's so many big questions that they are being confronted with on a daily basis. And so when we think of that as a parent, as a grandparent, maybe it's a part of our upbringing. Like, I just feel like in general, we kind of want to be cool. And how do you bridge that gap? You don't want your kids to not like you or think you're not cool. You want to relate. You want to build the openness between both to have conversations about Christ. So what advice would you give to grandparents and parents in engaging in conversations, and how deep can we go?
This is amazing. I like that you're asking these questions, Holly, because in many ways, I think that's where it starts. Like, obviously, a heart to want to connect with Gen Alpha, whether that be your own kids to your youth leader trying to connect within a youth group setting, maybe a grandparent, is asking yourself, what is the differences, and how do we, I guess, meet in the middle, if you will. So your daughter is fitting into this data set quite well, because we're recognizing that they're wanting to go deeper, quicker. They're spiritually curious in this way, and so I guess maybe the first piece of advice that I would give is, in their spiritual curiosity, we know that they're searching, and a lot of times they're searching online in these different platforms, and they're given agency to do so. They're given agency to ask the questions, to go looking, to go searching. And so the practical tip I could give, or maybe even like the practical question that I would ask someone like yourself is, what does that look like then for you in your household? Is your space a place that's your daughter, your kids, your student in your youth ministry is feeling safe and welcomed to ask those questions? It's really interesting. I think part of what the data really shows us even in that is prior generations maybe wanted to believe before they would practice the faith, if you will. What we're recognizing is this generation is looking to practice or try out, if you will, the faith to see if it's worth believing. Does that make sense? So it's like a bit of a flip.
Yeah.
And so, so how do we do that? How do you create a space that students are able to practice our different maybe faith disciplines, if you will, to recognize the goodness of God through these different practices? And so, I don't know, does that help? At least
it does, but then it's hard for someone who's like me, because we grew up with systems. You couldn't be baptized before you were 12, I think, or was it 14 in my church? And you had to go through certain things, and you were really put into a system where I don't feel like the system... It's like the system was built for 10, 15 years ago, and it hasn't adapted to where the youth are today. We think we got to entertain them, but they're so tired of being entertained, they just want something real. So what advice would you have as we try to shift the system that we bought into that needs to change to better feed their curiosity and their faith?
Yeah, this is good. Again, great questions to be asking. So I guess the first practical step is follow in Hollie's footsteps.
Call Charles.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
But I would say this, we're seeing them having these conversations in these different platforms, but something else that we found in the data is they are still looking for that connection with adults. And so we see in this that 83% go to their parents for moral or spiritual questions. And also in that same set of the 422 individuals that we were able to survey, 90% of them said that they have at least one trusted adult outside of their home. So they're looking for these connections. They're looking for those spaces in which they're not just receiving maybe information that they can get off of ChatGPT, but they're looking for that human connection to kind of go like, is what I'm feeling right? Is what I'm sensing right? And so when it comes to connection, I think something that we need to note is this idea of trust. And trust really is the foundation of any relationship. Trust is what's needed for that healthy connection. And sometimes when we think about this idea of building trust within a relationship, it's easy to gravitate to big gestures that we can do to help someone recognize that they can trust us. But in another set of studies that we were able to do a few years back, what we found was actually, and I actually think, I'm trying to remember her name, but she's just, it's escaping my mind as I think, but maybe I'll get it as I talk it through. She was asking this similar question: how do we build trust with this rising generation? And Carapal, thank you, Carapal from the Institute, but she said that we're finding that there's better results when there's smaller gestures happening frequently over a long period of time. And that really is the space and place that we're finding connection growing with these individuals. So instead of, youth pastor wowing said students with a really killer event, it might be more beneficial to create environments in which youth leaders have those small connection points. Hey, how did this week go? Hey, I remember that you had that test last weekend. How did that go? How are things feeling? Hey, can I come to your game? And those small gestures done over, a long period of time consistently builds those moments of connection. And when that's built, we'll find that students are now starting to open up about those deeper things in which they're thinking about.
Oh, that's awesome. Those are great little tips, because we do feel like we have to go above and beyond to wow them so that we're cool, and then they like us, and then they'll open up to us, and they just want us to be there and be present.
That's right. Presence is like the currency of the day, I would say, especially when we think about how it's becoming more easier to create content that can be consumed. Presence is just that much more valuable. Just that space and connection that one can have when two people are putting away distractions and connecting with each other.
Yeah.
In a world that's full of distractions, there's something quite valuable about that.
Which adds proof to one of the new trends that kids are doing on TikTok, where they're creating content where they're just bored. Because they're so tired of being entertained. They're just like, this is me bored. And I'm like, that was every day when I was in, junior high. That was just life.
For sure.
So it's like a bit of a flip in how we need to think about kids. I actually make my daughters sit and watch archaeological programs with me.
Come on now, good for you. And is it in a place in which they're enjoying it now, or is it still pulling that teeth?
No, they're starting to, because as the Joy listeners know, I like my archaeological programs in National Geographic, and they just like that it's true. And so we watch the ones about the Bible, but then it gives us a chance to reference the Bible verses and the Bible stories they heard about with real life archaeology. And it's been a very interesting way of creating fresh dialogue, just based on my need just to sit there and have something that I want to watch. But we just put a little Jesus tint on it, and it's so good, really fun.
I think you're hinting at something quite valuable here. Like the principle in that is like join them in their curiosity. So we know they're curious individuals. Yeah. Can we put whether it be content or whatever it is in front of them that continues to spark that curiosity, but together now? I think that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. The other thing that's fun is taking a Bible story. My youngest likes David and Goliath, which the real life version is not for kids. It's a pretty gruesome story, right?
For sure.
Goliath gets his head chopped off by David. You don't get that in Felt Jesus that we experienced as a child. But it's cool to be able to peel back the layers over time when they start asking those questions like, why? Well, why? Well, why? Finally, she was 8, and I'm like, well, Buddy beheaded him. That's how he didn't come back. And she was like, whoa.
I was going to ask, how did that conversation go for her?
Really good. And she's afraid of everything. But it was because the story was built up in the why and in God, that it just made sense to her that clearly they needed to go this far. It was a bad guy. And she's so fascinated by this Bible story. So it's sometimes taking off the G of the Bible, age appropriate, of course, and bring it to life so it's exciting for them because it's true.
100%. Like right now, it's, November the 19th of 2025, and we're coming quite close to the end of the year. And we've had over 400 student-led alphas, meaning that there's students that are taking the Alpha Youth program into their schools. They're running it for their friends. And I can't tell you the stories that have come back when it comes just to like the curiosity that this generation has about our faith, both from like a historical standpoint, but even like on the spiritual side of things. And so, lean into that like Hollie does.
I don't do everything right, but I sure can watch a National Geographic show like a boss.
Come on, that's right. There's nothing better. Is there a go-to show for you on National Geographic?
Anything to do with Egypt or the Bible. They kind of go into those ones. And there's so many of them now. It's exciting. So anyway,
I'm a sucker for like the shorts that they have on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah. That was my gateway.
Was it?
Yeah. So up next for
close.
you, National Geographic's full 1 hour long episodes with your popcorn.
There it is. I feel like I'm that much closer.
Yes, one day.
One day we'll get there.
Well, as we wrap things up, what piece of advice would you have for a grandparent or a parent, an aunt and uncle who is struggling to get past that first step, because that always is the hardest? They see the kid, they want to engage. There's all the feelings. What would you say to them to break the ice?
Yeah, good question. What would I say? Two things, I think. It's wise that we start with prayer, specifically praying for like God ordained moments of connection with this rising generation, moments that really can't be curated, but like you feel like you're being invited into it by the Holy Spirit. I like how one Pastor Daryl Johnson says it. He speaks of it from an evangelistic side of things. He says that evangelism is God having a conversation with somebody else and then starts inviting you into that conversation. This idea of reframing evangelism to see it as like something that the Holy Spirit starts. But I think that also applies to the grandparent that's looking and wanting this connection with this said student or this said, Gen Alpha that they're in relationship with, is that God just as much wants that connection between the two of you. And so start in prayer. And then the next thing I would say is stay curious. Like there's something beautiful that happens when there's two individuals that are different from each other, but come into relationship leaning into curiosity, because then now the relationship is built on getting to know the other person rather than feeling like they're almost like a project, if you will, or it's like you're trying to shape them into, how you'd want them to be. And so lean into into curiosity. Why do they enjoy the things that they do? Why are they interested in the things that they are? And then, just that last piece, it's like, what are small gestures that you can do over a long period of time to show them that you are someone that they can trust? And when trust is built, connection is an easy follow-up.
Amazing. I'm sure there's lots of notepads and pens furiously writing right now. If someone wants more information, they want to dive more into understanding who the Gen Alpha kids are, understanding what their likes are and dislikes, understanding more about the program that you guys have, where do they go for the details and what should they be looking for?
Yeah, great question, Holly. I would say start with our website, alphacanada.org, and you'll be able to navigate all the different resources that are accessible to you, whether it be this Gen Alpha report or even the Alpha Youth series that's been created in a way for someone like yourself to, use and help create those environments for those fun conversations around faith. I would say start there for sure.
Amazing. Charles, thank you so much for spending time with us today and giving us a little snapshot into this next and very incredibly curious and phenomenal generation.
And thanks so much, Holly.